Yeah, so I just wanted to on the related. Okay.
Is anybody else having trouble understanding the audio?
Yeah, Jackie,
Sorry,
is your
Jackie.
audio okay? No, we're not hearing anything. Would it help if somebody else verbalized on your behalf? Okay, cool. We can come back. Yeah. Well, then next we have Nicholas. Nicholas?
Sure, let's try the demo. Okay. So what we're trying to do is that we are able to change any work item to any other work item type, like if it's possible, based on our restrictions. And for now, I'm working only on the backend side so far, so we don't have any frontend for this. But yeah, we are close to having like the notation working and changing the types from one to each other. And I want to represent like what happens today when we change work item types. So here I have an example of an objective, and let's pretend we want to change this to a key result, which doesn't make sense. So in this case, we would just get an error that this is not possible. But assuming we want to move this objective to an issue because we maybe used the wrong type in the beginning, so I need to remove the child item that I have here. So otherwise it's not convertible. And assuming I remove that and change the whole thing to an issue, what you will see here, don't mind the system nodes that are already there, so my previous testing, but what you see here, once you change type, remove, it should reload, sorry. I'm on the wrong issue, I guess. Sorry, so this is the presentation. No, it's not. Oh yeah, actually everything worked. So no, it didn't work.
Did you submit the mutation though?
Yeah, it was the wrong. Well, it was the wrong one. Sorry. So now I said. So what happened now? I changed. I had the wrong ID here. But what I changed. So I changed it from objective to an issue type. And what changed is like we removed the progress. Here's a system node for that because an issue doesn't have a progress, and we changed the issue type to issue just now. The rest keeps the same. Like we have the same assignees, labels, and if I reload, the UI also updates then, and we now have all the things that are available for issues. And let's pretend I like add a weight, I add a milestone, add an iteration, and so on. And let's say issue was also the wrong type. I want to change to test case. So submitting this mutation again will actually delete all data that was is not available in the test case anymore. So if we reload again, we only see what's available for test cases, and at least have like the data available that was deleted in our system nodes. So we don't have all the data. You can see like labels and assignees, but we don't know what the health status was or what iteration we removed. And that's one of the next steps we want to iterate on. So we have the old data as well available as a system node. Yeah, this is currently work in progress. It's like under review, but if this gets merged, I found one bug today, we should be able to move basically any work item to any other one and have correct data. And this gives us at least an easy way to promote key results to objectives and back as long as they are valid. Yeah, that's pretty much the demo. Thanks for watching.
Cool. So looks awesome. As somebody who has not been in the weeds with work item type conversion, like why do we remove that data instead of just keeping it but not showing it?
Because we have the data that is like, let's pretend Jan made a good issue, right? This is why we should keep that. Let's pretend we have like a issue that has a weight of 5, and then we convert it to a test case. And every time we want to, for example, accumulate all the weights that we have available, like that are accumulated over all issues on this table, we also need to keep care of, like, is this data actually accurate? Like, does the work item that currently has this data on it? Like, we have data that is not visible to the user either. So it's strange. And actually I think other systems do this as well. Like Amanda did research, and I think Nick as well. So it's a very destructive action. And we can even in beforehand show the user what data will be deleted.
Cool, thanks.
And Nicholas, did you mention that we are writing that to the system notes?
We write that to the system notes, that data got deleted, and next step we will also write what got deleted, so you know more. Like for labels and assignees, we already do this, and for progress as well, but not for weight or health status and so on. So that's the next thing.
So the research showed that in other systems, when you convert to a different type and then back again, the data has been deleted.
I only know from one direction, but Amanda, maybe you know more about like going back.
Yeah, I just tested in a couple of different applications, and the going back only had the data available that was now in the new type. It didn't carry forward its original data. I'm sure there are some systems that do that, but the ones that I looked at did not.
Great. So when do you think we'll be able to change key results to objectives? Because we're currently talking about this between the EMs. Like at the minute, we have to like delete an objective, delete a key result, and create an objective, and so on. Yeah, you get the picture.
Both merge requests and review, I hope they get merged in this milestone, and then we still need the front end, but we also have a task, like an issue for a quick action. So this will be easier to implement. So you can like promote. I know we don't want to use the word promote anymore, but like at least convert a work item. And so we can add a quick action for you then. So maybe 2-3 weeks.
Awesome. Thanks. If there's no other questions on that, Jackie, do you want to take it? Sorry, go on.
Just real quick, John, I'm sorry. I just want to highlight that point though, like how important this is going to be for the next Q2 OKRs in GitLab. They're going to start writing those soon, right? They do it like 8 weeks out or something. And so this is the time when people accidentally will create something as a key result and they meant it to be an objective, or they later find out that it needs to be an objective because it needs to be children. So this is really going to help our internal team members with their dog fooding efforts in OKR. So thank you very much for working on it, Nicholas.
Yeah, and
I'm checking if oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Jackie. Just on that point, we were working really closely with Avalanche when we first built OKRs, but is that still ongoing now? Like, do we have a plan to get OKRs in front of regular customers at some point soon?
Yeah, that plan will be on Avalanche. So we are still burning down the list of things that we're contributing to, just because they're related to work items, and the OKR feature will need that. But the OKR specific work that is needed for general availability is going to be navigated by Avalanche. But I'm going to drop in the Zoom chat here the link to kind of how we're classifying the work that both SEG and the plan teams are doing, and how it kind of rolls up to availability for OKRs for reference.
Thank you. Sorry, Jackie. Go on ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. Is my audio working now?
Yeah, sounds good.
Y'all can hear me? Okay. I like the Monday technology problems. So the agenda item I added is just around updates on the work item OKR. If you aren't aware, there's a design objective around like iterating on the design direction for work items. There are some gaps, there's some questions that people have had, and we're trying to wrangle all of those, identify what the gaps are, see where we're real confident in the direction and where we might have to do some additional validation or, just additional prototyping and stuff like that. So that's there. We got a late start because of the reorgs and all of the changes. So we're kind of just, we're diving in really deeply now. There's 3 KRs, but on the top level objective, I couldn't link to the comment, but if you scroll down into the comments, I'm gonna add a progress update just with a couple notes about what's going on. And then when we have stuff to share out, we'll definitely share it either in this meeting or some other way. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I had a question, but you can link to the comments even though there isn't a control for it. You just right click on the time next to your name, just for reference.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. So my question is, whenever we're working on large initiatives, I think that it's really good to like have benchmarks or milestones that we could have as a readout, or even ideally bring into the planning of the dev cycle. So I'm wondering, is there any way to break these down into something that you could either demo maybe in these meetings of progress, or something that we can actually take and start planning into the dev cycle? Because waiting a full quarter is a long time for us to use it.
Well, so they are broken down, but it's not exactly into stuff that I could think of that you could deliver to dev. The first KR is around inventorying the current and proposed patterns and changes. And then the second KR is kind of page level patterns. And the third KR is like IA, so navigation and workflow. And we're not necessarily doing them in that order because you kind of have to, we were a little bit too much in the weeds, it felt like. So we went up and we started working on KR3, which is more IA. And then once we have kind of a better framework there, we could dig into the weeds more. So that being said, it's not like immediately obvious to me what actual usable outputs like that y'all could take and run with in terms of dev. But if you have certain things in mind, then I would say chat with Melissa, because I know she's out this week, but we meet with Melissa every week and talk about the progress on the work items KR. So if there's something you're looking for, maybe we could look at it, but I'm not sure. Any other questions or concerns or comments or tips?
I'd like to understand a bit, because like it feels to me that we should have this information architecture breakdown before we kind of move on with all of the work items at the group level stuff. So it does feel like this is a blocker to moving forward with all of the implementation. Or the question would be, how much is this a blocker to whatever we're trying to do now? In a way, like
I don't know. Yeah,
because like it feels like we will go forward with some implementation, and then we may get pushed back in the sense that it doesn't align with the whatever kind of architecture and UX and stuff we come up with.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak to like what happened before, but it does. I do feel like it does feel like we're a little behind. So we're trying to move really faster than we normally would. And the product designers were kind of asking about that. And I was like, I think it's because we feel a little behind. Like some things are already being worked on and already done and in motion. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like the design direction that we reach would require anything to change on the back end, maybe on the front end. I don't know, but I don't know what to say. I think we still have to kind of keep iterating and going, but it is important to do this work. So I would say it's better late than never.
Yeah, I think I worry about the same thing because we're going to make a lot of progress in a quarter. And I just really want to make sure that we're aligned on the things we're doing and not having to do rework or going the wrong direction.
We're already halfway through the quarter, aren't we?
Are you gonna, is this going to wrap at the end of the quarter? Because you've mentioned that you started late, so
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
think it's
worried
gonna
that
be
this is gonna
yeah.
bleed.
Yeah, we're doing the best we can, but it is late and it is hard. I mean, so we're using the mental model study to inform like workflows and how things should be organized in the app. And they'll have had that for a little while. So I don't know that it's going to be vastly different. And if it is, it's for a really good reason and it's based on research that we've done.
Yeah, I mean, you all are also taking into account the current state, I'm assuming, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that the way that things are currently in are going to be completely revamped. I'm assuming as we figure out the implementation plan, we'll have to take into account, okay, this is, in order to do this part, it would require a complete change of this. So maybe there's not a whole lot of value in actually doing that. So I think like once this is done, we'll have to sit down and kind of plan everything out. But I don't think we should block any of the dev work or any of the design work that's already been done for group work items or any of the work items work we're doing this quarter.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And we're always going to look at things and try to balance the user needs and the business needs and feasibility. So I think it's fine. Any other questions? Okay, well, if anything comes up, you can reach out to me anytime, or if you have any concerns, or happy to also do one-on-one chats if you want to dig in and get more info on what we're doing. Thanks all.
Thank you. Amanda, your item is marked read only, but there's a ton of discussion underneath. What do you want to do?
Well, I'll just call out that I want to understand what folks would expect when converting an issue to an epic, which has child or related tasks. What would you expect to happen to those tasks? And no answer is right or wrong. Just want to know what you expect. We're going to be conducting, or I'm going to be conducting some validation around this to figure out what we should be doing. And there's been several very good related discussions mentioned in that right up there in people's comments about, well, could we answer this question after we decide maybe is there a defined hierarchy, and some other good call outs. So please do add to that conversation. Async is totally fine unless anybody feels strongly about chatting about it.
Does anyone want to vocalize their contribution here?
The only thing I was going to say is that we have a database table that we added for relationship types and restrictions, which will eventually, in the long run, let customers sort of configure their own relationships. So I think whatever we do, we should start with that and then make it also not static. And then create user feedback, whatever happens, just so it's very clear. That was my TLDR, but I agree with what Brett was saying too in terms of like making generic is sort of what I would do. Because every organization has a very different, almost sort of tribal way that they develop their own processes, and GitLab's no exception with our product development and things like that. So sort of where we can't do like a one size fits all approach with this.
What if you convert it to something that doesn't have any children? You know, what about the other way around?
I would think it would break the relationship and not destroy any data, and or instead of making it children, convert them to related instead of child. It's just changing the relationship type is really what I would expect to happen more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should follow the whatever hierarchy definition you have on that work item type. So if it doesn't define any children, you should get an error message or an warning saying that you'll convert, but whatever children are going to be orphaned or whatever that is. Because like once you define a hierarchy, you cannot really break that definition in a way, because then you get the uninspected children and all that relationship is now no longer defined as you wanted it to be defined. But yeah, it's a complex question, I think, in both in terms of implementation and UI and UX.
And the other thing you need to be careful of is having two different models of handling data when you convert from one type to another. So in some, you're going to delete the data, and in others, you're going to break a relationship. So that just needs to, if we do that, that just needs to be very clear, you know, so that you know, oh, I'm converting this. I'm not deleting the tasks, but I'm deleting my progress. And so, you know, we need to make that stuff clear.
Yeah,
I agree. I
well,
think
right?
in both scenarios, when we convert a task, when we convert a time to another type, we should be showing which data is being removed, sort of in a way, or cleaned up. And similarly, when you convert it to a different type and it has children, we should be showing that these children are either removed completely, or the relationship is removed, or whatever we decide, like whatever we decide to do, we need to be very explicit about what's happening in between that conversion and in between that transition.
It's funny because like we just had this conversation about weight, and even in that context, it's the exact same thing, because if you convert an issue to a test case, we clear the weight, right? Why? Because the context is different. Like the weight might be different for this piece of work as a test case than it would be as an issue. But if we converted like you know, an issue to an epic and they both have tasks, we're going to retain the tasks. Why? You know, like why destroy the weight but retain the tasks? So I think we need like a consistent model, or at least a good reason to do that.
Maybe we can, just a wild idea, maybe we can be flexible and offer the user a choice. Like, what would you like to do with tasks if we are promoting issue to Epic? Yes, twice as much work, but if we're going to have issues on Epic and if we allow tasks on Epic, it makes sense to ask user, what do you want to do with the tasks?
I like to get a bit into technical details. So like I make this like very specific notation right now with like work item convert notation. One of the like future ideas I had maybe in my mind was that you can dry run it. So maybe we could like dry run this notation. You get in the front end all the deletions that would happen. And then we could ask the user, like, what do you want to change it to? And then you could actually like update the work item based on that. Like this is like maybe too much in detail, but it would maybe work with your idea, Natalia. So yeah.
I think the user decision is kind of nice to do once, but then like on every conversion, if you have to do that decision over and over again, it kind of gets annoying. Like I do it once, twice, like 10 times. Do I really need to tell you that every time I'm converting, I want these items to go into this specific type? So yeah, there are pros and cons, definitely. So
maybe it brings us to John's idea, like we run ChatGPT on it, and it should figure it out on its own.
I think ChatGPT is becoming the answer to everything at the minute. It's frightening. We can talk about that later. Okay, I want to jump on. Brett, you had a demo for us?
Yeah, just like let me share the screen here. Oh, but there was a selection thing here. Sorry, I don't do this very often, so there we go. Portion of the screen. Yep. So really, this is a very simple demo. I'm playing with. Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's just do this. Can you see? You can see the screen?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah. Okay. So moving around doesn't do any good. Okay. So basically, what I'm doing is playing with replacing our Markdown parser with a Rust version, because we're going to have to do this at some point. And this is going to provide us some more extensibility, etc. So just real quick, if you look down here at the pry, we've got text equals test of the emergency broadcast system. I've got some some bolding and some italics in there. And if I run that through Bonsai, I get typically what you would expect. The difference you see here that is visible is the data source. This is actually, we don't get that currently. This actually gives us position on inline elements. And this is going to be very beneficial to the content editor in terms of preserving the markdown as it moves back and forth. So that's a very helpful capability of this. The neat thing here is that this is a little gem that I put together, Ruby gem, that has the Rust extension in it. And you can see that here, the live main, and then the main piece here, it's using the new Markdown it Rust package or crate. And so it's just calling out to that. So it's very early stages. I'm still doing a lot of investigation, but anyway, that's the deal.
So is this a step towards having a structured content in a way, like a more structured content, if you will, where everything is broken down into some sort of a structure so that you can track like lines and so on?
Well, yes, the data source actually, the source position actually gives us the ability to track lines, the position of them. I'm not sure what you mean in a different way. We will be able to we should have access to the AST if we need it. But the neat thing is we'll be able to push down a lot of our filters, such as the multi-line block quote, math, those things down into a compiled extension that'll run much faster, and allow us to do some of these things that we can't really do at the Bonsai level. Math is one, the definition list is another. Very difficult to implement either before or after the markdown processing. So doing it in the parser is going to be a huge win.
So what I was asking is like, would this help also with the conflict resolution when we talk about like real-time simultaneous editing of the same kind of piece of information, or it's not intended for that?
It's not really intended for that. it might help a little bit because of the additional source positioning, but I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
And part of the reason we need to start looking at this is the libraries we currently use are moving to Rust versions and actually don't support everything we need them to. So this is a good time to start looking at some alternatives.
Pretty cool. So I'm curious, like, would it be possible to move the whole Markdown passing to the front end, especially now it's Rust and we could ship it as a WASM on the browser?
This would give us the ability to do some of that. There are components of the processing that we can't do on the front end very easily because they require database access.
Yeah, that's yeah.
But being able to package this as a WASM would give us much closer front end capabilities in terms of either previewing or whatever else. So I see a lot of possibilities with this.
Cool.
But for the database access, if we would replace those components, those things with some like GitLab UI components where those would make calls to the database, or I'll share a link actually with an idea from Gabriel, I think he was, where like we can store stuff on the local storage like as cached, and then once that cache is expired, we can make the calls to the database. So if we have that component as a GitLab UI component, then we can probably do all the rendering on the front end. Anyway.
Possibly. One thing you got to remember is that we do a lot of redacting. So it's based on user permissions, what you have access at the time, which can change underneath you, various things like that. So I'm not against that, but there's definitely some challenges there.
Yeah. So the thing is that GitLab component would only contain a reference as an ID, and then it will send a request to the backend basically, and return the content as a result, as a response to that. Anyway, yeah, makes sense. I'm not sure. We do have a bit of time, right? So I can share my screen now. So this, I think I've demoed part of this some time ago about work items being at the group level. So you can see this is a group, and you can see it's not very visible. I'm not sure if I need to make it larger or not, but you can see that some of these issues are, or tasks are created exactly at the group level, and then there are a couple at the project level. So what I've been working on is work item creation mutation. So if I have this new, it's like I don't have the UI, it's just the backend part, but basically I do have a backend where I can create a key result one. It'll, like on the UI, will show an error, but in fact it is created at the group level. And this is a POC, so this is not all in the master yet, and it's not really production ready, but you can also browse a work item at the group level now, and you can also browse this one at the project level, basically. So yeah, that's a short POC. As part of that, I think I can also share a bit of the. So in order to have that, what I had to do is basically make the namespace type into a interface. So like before that, you can see where when we want to pull the users for a work item, we always look into the project, because work items before were tied to the project. And what we can do instead is look them up by the namespace full path, because that will resolve to either a project, and now we have project namespaces, so we can do that. or we can resolve it to a group. So with a bit of the changes in the front end, I think we'll need to do that for a lot of these relationship like labels, milestones, users, and so on. But I think that should be doable. Like for instance, here I can assign a label because of that interface thing. So this will look up the labels and so on. Yep, so this is the short demo.
Would this be a breaking change on the API?
No, it should not, at least not that I'm seeing. What the breaking change is actually making sure all the permissions would work. In the sense that we used to rely a lot on the project authorizations table where you cache the roles from groups into that project. And we need to skip that now, especially when you pull the list at the group level. You want all of the work items from all of the child groups and child projects. So you cannot join only the project authorization. You at least need to do a left join and then also compute the memberships within the groups, because we don't have a groups authorization table where you cache the memberships within the subgroups and so on. So that's where it's kind of tricky, and we need to check with the permissions and how you have access to issues beneath those groups and so on. So you only can access subgroups that you actually have access to. But otherwise should be fairly okay, I think.
We should probably ship this with feature specs from when we do implement it properly. That's the thought.
Yeah, we definitely should feature flag it, because again, there is potential in terms of not only leaking data, that's one part of it, but also a performance hit, again, because we don't have that cached version of the memberships and so on. So
Do you know if there's any plan from POTS group to maybe implement something like that? Like a minimal project or group authorization table?
yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I'm not up to date on that.
I think we've looked at this a couple of times, but having a group authorizations table, and it got blocked a couple of times. I'm not sure exactly why. For some reason why it wasn't as simple to do as the project authorizations table.
I think one of the reasons was that we did get into a lot of bugs while implementing the project authorization, because like there are a lot of places where you can miss stuff and have breaking things. I think we still have a lot of feature flags in terms of like traversal IDs, but that may be helpful in computing all of these memberships. But again, I don't think that's enabled like all over the place, and all the feature flags. And I don't think all the feature flags are enabled to be using that. I'm testing it out how it works, but that can be probably helpful in doing some of the performance optimizations.
Cool. Nice
So,
one. Nicholas?
I only have a request to remove lots of content from this file because it's like lagging. So we make an archive of the plan Google Doc.
I'll take an action to do that, and I'll have it done by next week.
Thanks.
Uh-oh, chat GPT time. Right. So yeah, like this is the sledgehammer that I think we're applying to every problem now. Like so, but yeah, I was curious to find out like how effective it would be to actually start training this on some of our data. So if you're interested, like you can check out that thread. I put it in the plan channel, and but it was at the end of a Friday EMEA time, so I don't expect that everyone will have seen it. A couple of things about it that I think are interesting. First is the cost. They famously like cut the cost by 10x a couple of weeks ago, but it's still quite expensive given that it was one issue. It's quite a long issue, but nevertheless, it cost about in total about $1.50 to $2 just to ask, maybe like 15 questions, like something like that. And I picked out some of the more interesting ones and put them in the thread. That said, like I'm no expert. I also used their most like accomplished model, which is DaVinci, which is quite expensive to use. So I'll try using Ada or Babbage at some point. And also I didn't do any fine tuning. So fine tuning is when you like tune it once on your data and then you ask it questions, which are the cheap part. I did the in context method, which is it basically trains it every time you ask something. So yeah, like anyway, so it was quite expensive, and the answers were like quite funny at times because they were sort of hilariously wrong, but it was very confident about them. And then also it remembers the context. So anytime you tried to ask it something afterwards, like it would include that same erroneous assertion. So I think I asked it like whether I wanted to see if it could go into a very technical discussion and give me answers that were in fact very, very specialized. And it did. And even based on what was in that issue, they were correct to a point, like even though they looked wrong, but we've just simply moved on since then and made different decisions. But it's also quite funny that it tried to convince me that using a single table for work items, although that's the decision we went with, that it was because it was more performant and easier to scale, which is like pretty much the opposite of what we decided, even though we decided to go with it anyway. But what's funny is that it remembered that it had told me that, and then when I asked questions afterwards, it would always revert to that. I could ask it if the sky was blue, and it would have said the sky was blue, and also that we should reuse the issues table for everything because it's easier to scale. So like some interesting stuff. So anyway, like yeah, this is the end of my big talk. But the point is one issue, and it's a long issue. It's got like 100 comments or something, but I'm going to try next to maybe train it on the whole corpus of GitLab org/GitLab's issues, discussions, and epics, but just the public ones, and then see if it gets any more interesting. I'll also try some of the cheaper models as well that are faster to train. And we'll go from there. This is definitely like a spare time project though, so I don't know in the week of St. Patrick's Day whether I'm going to get any spare time, but we'll have to see.
I'm curious if anyone tried, or if you tried to ask it to weight an issue or something like that based on the information that you have. Like how much would it deviate in the sense of like, would it always give it a 1 or 2 or something like that? Or
that's a great idea. And I didn't actually include, so here's the interesting thing about it. I didn't clean the data at all, right? So what I did was literally copy all the discussion and everything, but I didn't, I copied in system notes, but I didn't make any attempt to expand the system notes. So instead of saying like, this issue was added to an epic called complete work items by this time, you know what I mean? Like it just said this issue was added to epic 451 whatever. So if you would expand all that out and really clean the data, it might be interesting because it wouldn't know weight because I didn't give it that, but it would know it from the system notes. So it would have seen that the weight was added. So it would be interesting actually to train it on and to try and include things like weight and everything on the whole public GitLab corpus or whatever, and then try to like give it tasks like estimate this issue.
yeah, like I was thinking estimate and then plan like 3 iterations where like what can we achieve in next quarter or something like that. I'd be curious if that would be something that we can do, but because that's where I think the costs of it kind of pay for themselves in a way. If you can do that, it kind of where you can get the benefit of paying for such a thing. But yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting was so it recommended a team member, former team member now, but a team member who I asked it to could it recommend somebody who I could go to ask further questions, and it recommended this former team member who was heavily involved in the decision making around database issues. What's funny about it is that it recognized that that person that person was a maintainer, but now as a former team member has contributor access. It understood the word contributor and then told me that he had made contributions to the project. And it's very subtle, but it's also very interesting that it understood that role, do you know what I mean? And that it kind of understood, like when I asked for some recommendation about who I could talk to, it told me all about this person and the contributions that they've made and so on. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. And I think like that's why it's worth doing some exploratory work to see kind of like what applications it could be turned to, if any, reliably.
Did you ask for a complete summary and like the outcome of the issue?
Yeah, so there are a few different things you can do with it. I didn't put that in the thread because I did it late on Friday out of just sheer curiosity. But there's a summary mode, and it was quite good, but I think it needs a lot more tuning to give decent, reliable summaries. One thing that I think might be interesting actually is just to give it the discussion element and do an auto-generated summary of any discussion in any issue, because some of them get to a certain point where if you're trying to catch up on an issue, which I try to do a lot, especially right now when we're planning the next milestone, if I need to know like very quickly, if I have like 10 issues I'm considering and I need to know what the current state is, it would be very interesting to have like, just give me a summary of these 60 comments. I don't have time to read them all. And that it would give you some rough idea of the major decisions that were made and things like that. It seems like it's pretty much designed for that kind of work, asking questions and giving summaries. If you have any questions you'd like me to ask, until my original $10 of credit runs out, you're welcome to pass them along and I'll give you the answers in the thread.
I mean, the next thing is like create a merge request out of this issue. But maybe don't ask that. We all want to keep workshops.
What does that do to the DevSecOps cycle if you remove the DevSec and the ops part? All right, cool. I would have liked to have heard from Gabe actually about this MAO growth in February, but I guess we'll have to check that out, I think. Cool, we're out of items. I'm going to stop recording, but feel free to stick around.